Hey fellas, it's Zem again, and I'm actually doing these video. Somebody actually PM'd me after a game. They saw me playing the IS-6, and I found it kind of an odd question. But he actually asked me if the tank was still a viable tank, if it still worked like it used to. Obviously, it still doesn't work like it used to. It's matchmaker changes, the influx of different kinds of premium tanks. That this has kind of been falling kind of along the wayside. It's not quite as what it once was. Problem is this course is a preferential matchmaker, so it never sees tens, sees nines, and most of the time it sees mostly tier eights, and of course with a smattering of being top tier itself. Now this tank has always had kind of a reputation, or it did have a reputation when it first came out, as being very user friendly, right? And that comes from the fact that with the preferential matchmaker before, you spent most of your time in being top tier. You very seldom ever had an all tier 8 match. Most of the time you were shooting at sixes and sevens. And that kind of really built on its reputation as, being very user friendly, new friendly, maybe that's the word for it. Because it did very well against sixes and sevens. Once you got in its own tier, it wasn't as impressive. And most people didn't get that. They always assumed this was just some sort of super tank. Well, it wasn't really a super tank. It was just very good against low tier tanks. So with that said, this tank was actually produced in 1944. There was possibly two prototypes. I know for sure there was one prototype because there was some black and white pictures of it, but I think there was one with a manual transmission and one built with a electronics transmission. There was a picture of two of them sitting next to each other. So there might have been up to two prototypes built. This was actually in a contest with a couple other heavy tank prototypes, which is IS-6 eventually lost to the infamous IS-4. So yeah, it never got past the prototype stage, but it did exist, so it's not just a paper tank. So let's go through the tank. 390 average damage, 175 pen. That is why it is a preferential tank. It just does not perform as well as other tier 8s. That's a tier 7 gun right there. 6.21 second rate of fire. It has a very nice reload, 9.66. It does well there. Negative 6 degrees of gun depression and a epically shitty aim time of 2.84. Match that went in with a 0.42 dispersion. Now, of course, that's fully aimed. It actually goes down to like 0.31 if it's a full balloon shot. I mean, these are Russian tanks, folks. Let's be honest here, right? 1,550 hit points, and the hull armor is what it actually kind of made it somewhat of a reputation. Is that people had a hard time penning it when it first came out due to its funky angles. People didn't know quite how to pen it. Of course, this used to be an actual weak point. This actually got removed at one point or another, so it never was really not a weak point. So once you learn how to pen it, it wasn't really that big a deal. Of course, sixes and sevens struggled against it, and that's why it got its reputation that it did. Of course, the cupolas are still crap, and that little piece of sheet metal right here, you can of course still overmatch this fairly easy. Yeah, not too hard. 100 on the front, 100 on the side, 60 in the rear. Turns very nice at 150, well rounded. Yeah, it does mount stuff, unless of course you get shots right to the inside of the cheek here. 150 on the side, 100 in the rear. And of course the always pennable cupolas, love that. This is somewhat troll, like I said, with this armor, with the well-sloped 100mm armor here on the side. This tank does work pretty well if you're side scraping, and you'll see that in the video that I'm showing you. Mobility, not bad. Top speed, real shit. And of course the traverse speed, not too bad either. No concealment. Yeah, it's just like a big barn door. View range is absolutely horrible on this tank, and the thing about it is you can't even really do anything to make it better. I mean, you might be able to get some cruise skills, but even putting equipment on it's going to suck, because you're going to want the enhanced gun laying drive or something to decrease that aim time. So yeah, it's not easy. I usually run improved vents, the large caliber tank rammer, and of course the enhanced gun laying drive is typically what I run on this thing. Of course, now here comes the big question. If you're going to be using this tank, you're gonna have to use APCR rounds. The premium rounds to do well, right? I mean, you can still not. Oh, I use only AP rounds, yeah, but you're not petted shit unless you get really lucky and somebody's give you their side. Yeah, you're not going to be penning tier 9 tanks with it. You're going to struggle against tier 9 tanks dependent from the front, even with APCR. And this is the problem. The reason I don't have a problem by using APCR. One, it's fairly reasonably priced. You have a 3K game in this, you're always going to be making money. You can always use AP if you're going to be top tier. If you get top tier, there's a bunch of 6s and 7s. Yeah, sure, run around with AP, blow shit up, and make a bunch of money. But when you have to deal with like an all 8 or 8 and 9s, you're gonna have to fire some APCR, because if you're not, you're just gonna die. You're gonna die. Oh, I just fired. I did 1,000 damage just firing AP shells. Yeah, but you didn't make nothing. I'll make more firing 10 rounds APCR and doing 3K damage. There's that toss up there. So yeah, don't be afraid to hit the 2 button with this tank. And this is the problem. The biggest problem with this, of course, is the matchmaker. What they could possibly do with this is, of course, fix the gun, give it 190 pen, let it have the preferential matchmaking, give it 190 pen, a little better accuracy, a little better aim time, would go a long ways to making this tank far more viable than what it currently is. And you'll see in the game coming up, I do use a fair amount of APCR. In fact, I think I fired 12 rounds of APCR. I still ended up with, oops, I lost it. This game that I'm been playing here next was an ace tanker, 108,000 credits. Even with 12 rounds of premium shells fired, I still made 40k. So yeah, I fired 12 rounds of premium shells, still made 40k. But you get what I'm saying? Don't be afraid to use the APCR. If you have a problem with that, whether it's moral ambiguity, whatever, then don't buy this tank, because it's going to need a little bit of APCR help once in a while to help you. If you're top dog, bunch of 6s and 7s, yeah, you're going to run around just fine with AP. It's when you're going to start running into the new VK1000, VK100s, things like that. You're going to struggle. Defenders, you're going to struggle with AP. You're just going to tickle them and give them free steel walls. So do not be afraid to use the APCR. That's the one downfall. Now, before I get into the video, is this tank still viable? Yes, of course. Any tank's viable. I know people that can do fucking wondrous things in M3 Lees. It's just how you're playing it and what you're producing. You can play any tank and do well in it. It's just a matter of, paying attention to what's going on the map awareness, and all that kind of stuff I do on these other videos. But yeah, it's still a viable tank. Does it need help? Yes, it needs help. Matchmakers fucked it. The gun fucks it. There's a few other things that fuck it, but it's still a viable tank. Of course, it's not as good as an IS-3. Probably better than a KV-5. slightly better. But it does. It's hurting right now. Is it worth the 30 or 35, whatever it is right now, or 50? I'm not even sure what the price is on this thing anymore. It's going to be entirely up to you. It does well at training crews. The matchmaker is still broke, but it does work occasionally with this thing. I think tonight I played 6 games, and 4 of them I was top tier. I only had 2 games that were against 9s, but 4 of them I was at top tier. So the matchmaker is still screwy for it, but you do see more 9s, but it still seems to work fairly well. So that's all said and done. We were going to get onto the video and give you an idea what this thing can still do, roughly, if you're paying attention and know what you're up to. So I will be bringing that video play to you right about now. Alright fellas, back with the gameplay in the IS-6. This is actually a tier 9 battle. The rest are all 8s. This is the Kharkov, I believe. Yes, Kharkov. So I'm going to actually take this and play like a typical heavy tank. I'm going to play down one of these alleyways, one of these curved alleyways. I don't know what kind of devil came up with this map, the curved alleyways. I think this is just to mess with players. So IS-6, got a Louvet with me, an E4, a couple other tanks, and I'm going to run right up in here to the one of these hold down positions. Start out with AP regularly, and like I said, do not be afraid to use APCR. This tank, suffers from this low, very low pen. By all means, use it when you're the top tier tank and there's a bunch of 5, 7, 6s and 7s. Yeah, go ahead and go beat them up. But for the most part, you're going to be wanting to switch back between APCR and AP quite regularly. I have 19 rounds here in this tank and 10 regular. Trying to go for his Cupola on the Carnarvon. And I'm going to be sitting here. There's an epic crap ton of tanks right here. And I'm actually going to be trying to do a little side scraping off here. The armor still works on this tank. No matter what you say, it still works. Especially if you're doing a little bit of side scraping here. And what I'm here actually trying to do is I was trying to overmatch his back deck, but it didn't work. Kron, once again, fails to pen me. And now I'm looking for, once again, a little bit of his weak spot on top of his tank. And he puts a nice shell into me at 311. I'm not even sure where he penned me at. I must have showed a little too much. Yeah. He got me on the lower plate, I think, it looks like. But anyway, back here. Now, British tanks are notorious for having really crappy, very crappy turret rings. That's actually where you saw me shoot right here. And this is Russian accuracy for you, right? If I would have hit, I would have penned the shit out of that guy if that would have been full bloom. But I didn't try. IS-6 moves around as I'm trying to shoot that guy. And now I'm going to get pushed here by the Kron and the other IS-6. The IS-6 actually nails my track. And now I'm going to use his body as a shield against that Carnarvon. And the Carnarvon keeps bouncing. And we finally finish off the IS-6. Once again, do not be afraid to dab that 2 key if you feel like you need it. The Carnarvon, I need him dead to get out of this position. So I need every shot to make sure I pen it. Put another shot into him, get me up to about 1500 damage. I already had blocked 1600 from him. That's when Mr. ISU shows up here. So I was hoping to get one more shot in the Kron, and that's not going to work. So I switched back to my regular AP because I should not have a problem with the ISU to actually be able to kill him. So I back up. He's coming around. He actually goes in behind those destructible buildings, and I'm just going to sit here and be a cheeky fuck and blow his cover up. So he shoots. Unfortunately, I will not be able to load fast enough. My own T-54 shoots me in the back of the noggin. Thank God he bounced, and I got lucky right there. But he is wrecking the ISU-152 pretty well here. He shoots his T-54. I do not get the shot that I wanted. I wanted to actually nail the top of his corner there, but it didn't work out. Carnarvon moves up. Here I'm looking. Finally get a nice shot into the ISU-152. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Always wiggle, boys. Always wiggle. Especially in this tank. The Carnarvon gets me again, but he takes a nice shot from the Louvet, the Louver, whatever you want to call it. Alright, so I switched back to a premium round. Because then I was kind of hoping maybe I was going to be able to get a nice shot on him, at least in his head or his turret. Unfortunately, no, so I pulled back around. He's too busy being tracked. The ISU-52, he's getting wrecked from all sides. Carnarvon's still looking at me, but I do have support. So, he's dead. Still about 2,300 damage, 2,300, 2,362, and it's time to go. So, keep my premium APCR loaded, switch to AP when I do get a chance here, in case I do actually have to get a nice shot on somebody's side here. I'm waiting for the 110 to kind of back up a little bit, and he actually had fired. He's busy with that RU, so I have a T-28 Proto here with me, and I'm a little too low health to deal with this, so I'm going to wait until the Proto goes around. Now the 110 actually had it loaded, surprise, surprise, um, HE for that RU, and which didn't work out well for him. So he puts another shell into him. I got one more. I switched back to AP here. So make sure you're switching back and forth. You know, obviously if you have a soft target, you want to be firing AP. The more difficult targets, hey, then switch to APCR for those kind of targets. You know, it's still very easy to make money in this tank, even shooting APCR if you're paying attention. A 3K damage game is going to be, you know, right around 100K. So it's doable. You know, I talked about earlier in the game, or actually earlier in the deal about this, whether this tank is still viable. Of course it's still viable. It's how you're going to be playing it. Is it as strong as it used to be? No, and that's probably more so along the lines of the fact that it doesn't see, it sees more nines. Is its biggest problem, and the other problem is, of course, the influx of better premium tanks. So this has kind of got overshadowed a little bit. Still viable, still make cash. You just got to make sure you, when you're playing, what tiers you're playing. Of course, you know, your money tiers are going to be when you're playing against 7s and 6s. These tiers here where you're going to be playing against 9s, yeah, you're going to be playing a little bit more APCR, and of course you're not going to be able to make as much money. Last time 416 was seen out here in the open, so I move out here. This is what I'm talking about, the absolute shit view range of this tank. 416 is actually somewhere in here, but I cannot see him. I don't actually pick him up until right about now. Oh, there he is. Find him, and he is AFK. So, get to farm a little damage here. 388, should be one shot. No! Denied. Go figure. So let's see if I can get the last 15 hit points and the kill. Boom. Yeah, wait for that gun to zoom in, because unless you're either full bloom or completely zoomed in, it's probably not going to hit the shot. So, final review, final say on this thing. Yes, it is still viable. You can still play the IS-6 and still make money in it. It's just not as good as it used to be. You just have to make sure you are watching what you're shooting, and when you are top tier, when you are faced off against a bunch of 6s and 7s, that's going to be your big money maker, because you can take advantage of their crappy guns and you know, punish them, do a bunch of damage, make a bunch of money, you know, things like that. Even after shooting, I started out with 9. I shot 12 premium rounds. I still, if you'll see in the garage, I showed you guys, I still made 35K. So it's not, you know, it's not completely unbelievable that you're able to make some cash even fighting APCR rounds. So hope you guys enjoyed the review, and I will be having more coming up a little bit later, fellas.